Hello and welcome. Tonight I invite you to unwind, escape, and find serenity through the magic of storytelling. Tonight's story is titled The Queen by Coutts. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, lived a very beautiful queen. This queen was known throughout the land as having unmatched beauty. She possessed all that a human heart could desire. She owned land as far as the eye could see, wealth that could not be counted. She had a palace full of servants who did her every bidding. Her wisdom was valued by all, and her counsel was sought even by the wisest. She was admired by all of her subjects, and she had no enemies. For all she had, the queen felt an absence of something. She could not quite understand what it was that she longed for, and this knowledge made her sadder by the day. She called in all her wise men and laid her concerns before them. The queen asked them to help her understand what it was that was bothering her. One said, "You need a larger palace, Your Majesty," smiling with satisfaction at his own cleverness. The queen thought about it for a moment and then shook her head very slowly and said, "That's not it." Another leaped forward proudly and he said, "It's a fast horse that you need." Even another said, "There are finer bits of jewelry to be had. Surely this will make you happy." One after the other, all the wise men gave their suggestions to her, confident that theirs was the best solutions. Each time she shook her head, knowing that none of these would bring up that one unknown thing. Every suggestion made the queen feel more and more sad. When all had done their advising, and the queen was at her saddest, a voice meekly piped up, "I know the answer, Your Majesty." There was much gasping and gaping as the owner of the voice forced his way through the crowd of the wise. "I'm not sure you could pay the price," he continued to say. There was laughter from everyone present. Even the queen herself managed a giggle. "Who is this fool?" they asked amongst themselves. "Does he not know that the queen's wealth cannot even be counted? Call the guards, throw him to the wild dogs, imprison him in the tower." Each wise man had a suitable punishment for the insolent old hunchback man that uttered those insulting words. "Wait," cried the queen as the old man was about to be seized by the guards. Everyone was a little startled by the order. "Everyone must leave this room at once but the old hunchbacked man," she commanded. There were gentle protests from the wise men, but they were wise enough to accept the order and exited the throne room. What is your name, old man? The Queen asked. Flax, Your Majesty, the old man mumbled on bended knee before the Queen. Even though his head was bowed, the Queen observed a little twinkle in his eye. Well, Flax, what did you mean? Your Majesty, Flax began, the price to pay might be more than you are willing to pay. Go on then, she instructed in the typical manner of speaking of that far-away land. Well, Your Majesty, it requires 7 payments, each more costly than the first. Yes? She inquired, growing impatient. I can only tell Your Majesty what each installment is on the day that it is due. Carry on, she told Flax. I will be here at first light to request the first payment. The Queen thought. I'm rather curious to see what it is that all my wealth cannot buy, and what an old hunchback man named Flax could bring to fill this missing part in my life. All right, the Queen said. Tomorrow at first light. That night, the Queen had a wonderful feast, and there was great merriment in the palace. As the first light of day broke through the curtains of the Queen's bedroom, there came a soft tap on a bedroom chamber door, and in walked Flax. Are you ready, Your Majesty? Flax asked. Yes, the Queen replied. The first installment is due. He smiled slightly. What is it? She asked. Your title, he responded with the same twinkle the Queen had observed the day before. And that's ridiculous, she shouted. For a moment the Queen considered the advice of one of the wise men who wanted Flax thrown to the wild dogs. As she was a wise queen, she always considered and reconsidered things. At last, after much thought, she relented. Flax lifted his gaze and looked into her eyes. Say after me, my title for thee. The Queen was mesmerized and could do nothing but comply. My title for thee, she whispered. Bam! In a moment, the crown had disappeared, and she found herself in a country estate, a wealthy lady, but no longer a queen. She was rather startled at this change in her surroundings and realized that the payment was indeed a real and a very expensive one. No longer the ruler of the land, she was now just a person of wealth. As was her way, she made the best of her situation, and although there were no subjects to wave at or ladies in waiting, she had a really good time. That day, she learned humility, because to esteem others is to do it without a crowd of privilege. The next morning, Flax was there again. The second installment, Lady Alita, for that was her name and she was no longer a queen. He raised his gaze again, smiled, and uttered the words, "Say after me, my wealth for thee." She was too mesmerized to resist and uttered the words, "My wealth for thee." Bam! The country estate was gone, and she found herself in a hovel. There were no longer beautiful clothes or nice furniture or things that the queen was so very used to. The food cupboards were mostly empty, except for a crust of bread and one used tea bag. With no servant to do it for her, the queen tidied up the hovel and made for herself a cup of tea and had the crust of bread to eat. This was not the kind of meal she was used to, but it filled her belly and she was thankful for it. She was tired but still content. That day, she learned endurance because living without wealth means that you have to endure much. On the third day, Flax was back for his next installment. The queen wondered what possibly could be the price of the next payment. It was not long before she found herself saying, "My looks for thee." That was to be her third payment. Having been used to being the prettiest in all the lands, her first look into a mirror was a bit of a shock. Then she burst out laughing and began shouting with joy, "What a wonderful, interesting face I have." That day, the queen learned that there is more to being beautiful than pretty. On the fourth, it was a youth with the words, "My youth for thee." Her bones ached a bit and she was out of breath very easily. She could not hear nor see as clearly any longer. One would have thought that this would have made her very sad, as the queen loved to dance and ride her horses. It did not. Instead, she thought to herself, "I'm always rushing about, being busy with things so that I can have fun. Now I can have fun in other ways. I can slow down and smell some flowers and watch the sunset." That day she learned that being young can be experienced in an old body. On the fifth, it was a wisdom she paid with the words, "My wisdom for thee." She found that there were very few things that she understood. She didn't understand what taxes meant or big words that most adults understood. Not knowing all those things did not make the queen sad. "That's odd," she said. "I feel as if there are so many less things to worry about." She met some people that day who were arguing about whose job it was to pick up a dropped page. Without saying a word, She bent down and picked it up and tossed it into a bin. The people were amazed at how simple the answer to that question was. On that day, she learned everyone is a great teacher who is first prepared to learn. On the 6th, she paid with dignity with the words, "My dignity for thee." People laughed at this lady that looked old, poor, and not very wise. She did not seem to notice. That day, she learned that another's measure of you is not as important as your own. Then, on the last day, Flax knocked at the door. Before him stood a frail old woman, bent over by age with lines mapping her face. Before her stood Flax, no longer old or hunchback, but upright, youthful looking. He had become beautiful as she had become less. "I have nothing left," she whispered. A little embarrassed to stand before this beautiful man, the kind of man she knew she had always wanted, the missing part that she had been searching for, but was now not fit to have. "But you do," he smiled and said in the same magical voice as he had the first day. "Say after me, my heart for thee." And she echoed his words, "My heart for thee." They appeared back in the palace on adjoining thrones in the midst of a wonderful ball, both beautiful and young again. "All hail the king and queen," the people cheered that were there. The queen realized again that she was a queen again, beautiful, wise, wealthy, youthful, and dignified. What about the last payment? What about the heart? She wondered. And she looked next to her and saw the king, King Flax. She knew where her heart went. That day she learned that not the title, nor the wealth, nor the looks, nor the youth, nor the wisdom, nor the dignity, but love alone can make you truly happy.